Okay, so today we're going to do the last segment of the light painting exercise. This one is a little bit different. Obviously, all three of them have been different in some way. Um, there are pros and cons. Obviously, this one as well needs to be done in total darkness, you'll see. Creates some issues and some problems, but the good news is that it can be done in one shot. You don't have to layer images together, do multiple images and combine them. You can do this with a single photograph, so that makes it makes it a little bit easier on the capture end. Again, you need to be able to either have a bulb setting on your camera or a long enough shutter speed for the light streaks that we're going to do to record. So we're going to do two different exercises. One, and we're going to be working with people primarily to show you, or at least for the first one, to show you how you can mix this. Now, this technique, the first technique that we're going to do, mixes flash with the long exposure light streaks. There are a number of ways to do this. Even if you just have a pop-up flash on your camera, this will work. But again, it does have to be done in darkness. So we'll just kind of show you, and I'm not using a standard handheld flash or shoe mount flash. I am in my studio, so I am going to use my my softbox for this. It's just more convenient for me. It's all set up to fire these things automatically. The thing with them is they have modeling lights, meaning that when I turn them on, you can see this is not the light that actually records the image. It's just a temporary light for me to be able to see by, but I can't have any light on at all. So I have to turn those modeling lights off. So that light is off, or the modeling light is off, but the flash is still on. When I trip the shutter on the camera, it'll fire the flash, again in total darkness, and then give me the exposure that I want. And if the camera is on bulb setting, it'll stay open long enough for me to do what I need to do. I'm also using my iPad to trigger this. Again, you can use an app that comes, you can download from the camera manufacturers, usually for your phone. So let me just change my shutter speed. Okay, so it does not give me the option to set to a bulb setting. Let me see if I have to do that on the camera first. All right, so the camera's on bulb, meaning that when I push the button to expose the image, the shutter will stay open. Auto shutter mode bulb. Okay, so I'm at F8, ISO 200, and I'm in bulb mode. And let's see, I need to keep this window. No, we can do that. Okay, so I don't know, I'm hoping that you can see this. Trying to arrange the camera so that you can see everything. Okay, so you can at least see the screen on that, and the camera's here on the left. I just need to line this up, and what I'm going to do is fire this light. And then I'm going to use this pen light. I have another one here that's a white light that I may combine with it eventually, but we're going to keep it simple first. I'm just going to use this light here. Let me turn it off for now. So the flash will fire. It'll expose the subject. Again, we're very rudimentary. We're just using one light initially. I'll add some more here in a minute. And then with the long exposure, we'll do this. Now I have to come over here, unfortunately. Actually, I guess I could take the iPad with me. No, if I do that, it's going to actually be seen. The light from the iPad will be seen. So it has to stay here. So I'll have to come back to initiate and to fire the camera and to stop the exposure. So she doesn't know it yet, but my subject is, is standing off in the wings. And we need to get her in place so that I can line the camera up on her. So I'm just going to put you about right here. And just stand right there until I get the camera lined up. So I'm going to pre-focus this on her. And we're going to do a quick test. Let's just, actually I'll fire the camera from the iPad just to see if we're going to get an exposure. And of course we were on bulb mode with the room lights on, so that's not going to look too good. But all right, so I know we're okay. We've got pretty much what we need here. We're leaving a little bit of space around her for this technique. Line it up just a touch more. Danielle, turn your body just a little bit this way and then flip the knees. Yeah, just like that. Good. All right. Get her right back in the center. All right, so now for this to work, I have to turn all the room lights off, which includes the closet light here. There can't be any real extraneous. Now I do have some daylight coming in from that room over there, which could be an issue. We'll have to see if it is. If it is, we may have to try to block it somehow. There are no windows in my camera room, but I do have a separate room back there that has a couple of windows, and that's probably what I'm seeing here. So anyway, we're going to turn the room lights off. I'm going to fire the camera in bulb mode from the iPad, and then I will move behind her with this light and create some streaks, stop the camera, and see what we've got. So while the room's in darkness, you'll see the flash fire and you'll see this. And then once I stop, you should see the image on the iPad. So let's see what happens. All right, so we're going to fire first of all. And the shutter is still open. Now she has to stay pretty stationary. And I'm just going to create these horizontal wavy lines all the way down below to where the camera's cutting off. Now let me stop and see what we have. All right, there, it worked actually pretty much exactly the way I wanted it to. You can do all sorts of things with these lights. You can work with different types of lights, which we're going to do here in a second. And I'm going to actually use, actually I think what I'm going to do first is put a couple of kicker lights on. I'm not going to use a hair light because I don't want to create a contrast problem up there. But let me just put a couple of lights on in the background. Again, the modeling lights have to be off on these lights. And let me just do a test to see if they're all on fire. Two of them did. The third one is not receiving any light, so I need to put a trigger on that. Okay, so what I did, all of these lights have photo eyes, you know, sensitive, that they're supposed to fire when they sense a flash in the room. But that one isn't really being hit by any direct light, so I'm just using one of these triggers. I plug this into the light, and I have a transmitter on the camera that's the same, and it'll fire. It should, in theory, fire that light. Let's just see what happens. Yeah, it did fire at that time. All right, so let's do this one more time. We'll go back to darkness and just see what happens just with the addition of those two lights. And luckily that light coming from the room behind does not seem to be an issue. So here we go again. There's our initial exposure. Again, the speed that I do this with is going to be dependent on the brightness of the light. Let's just do a couple extra little curly cues here. And so one thing I'm seeing happen is that one of my kicker lights has fired multiple times. And that happens sometimes, which is going to probably create some issues on that side. Yeah, it definitely did, because you can see when it fired, it actually recorded me, because I was in that position. And I'm not sure why that happens. It does occasionally in this situation where that light fires multiple times. So I think I'll keep that light off and just work with the other one and see if we can get a little better look at it. Let me turn that light off. So even the accidents that you're seeing, you know, they'll teach you something. Like I said, you'll see that ghost image of me there. So you realize what's happening and why that happened is that light fired while I was in that position. So let's try this one more time with just the kicker on the one side. Put a few more lines in this time. Now, if she doesn't stand still, there will be some ghosting with those lines, but it looks like she stayed pretty still. That was about a 25-second exposure. Let's see what it looks like. Yeah, can you see, and I'll show you this later, you can see a little bit of a ghost image along the right side especially, where she shifted position a little bit between the flash exposure and you know, the length of time that the shutter was open. And that's just something that you're going to have happen when you're working with people. So we try to immobilize them as much as possible. A lot of times I'll work with people lying down, like on the floor or something. But in this case, just for the exercise, we just kind of wanted to show you how this can work. I think what I'm going to do is play with my second light that I have here and use it to highlight. I'm going to turn that kicker light off and maybe use this little pen light to highlight some things on her shadow side. Let's see how that works. Probably get one more exposure this way. All right, so that light is off. And here we go, final exposure this way. Let's do some diagonals this time. And then while that's open, I'm just going to light this side of her a little bit with the other lights. You never know, this is trial and error. You can kind of guess what you might get, but it's very much trial and error. So you can see on the left-hand side the actual light source. Yeah, I'm not sure I'm digging what's happening there anyway, because there is some movement. And that light is really not strong enough to light up what I wanted to light up anyway. So let's do one more thing here. Let me get the lights back up. I'm going to show you one more cool exercise that might be fun with this. So what I have here is this actually just a piece of metal that has these two glow sticks taped to it. And let me get these turned on. Why is it white light now and not? So that one's green. This one is supposed to be red. I'm not sure why it's not. It was. Was it not? Something has changed.
Is it not lighting up?
It's lighted back in. All right, so we're just going to have to go with it white. No idea why or where that piece might have gone. So this will change it a little bit because white light is going to be brighter, obviously, than the green light. So we're just going to tape it back on. And we'll show you two different things probably with this. See how it goes. It should be, exposure-wise, it should be very similar to what we had already. The speed that I wave this with, basically I'm just going to use it like a wand behind her and we'll see what happens. I really do wish that was red. But anyway, we'll see what happens in the dark here. Ready? All right, here we go. Now what's tricky is getting it in position because it's on, so we may see some trails of me moving in and out with this light. Yeah, just a little bit at the bottom, but overall, yeah, Yeah, I really wish that was red, but the green and the white is kind of cool. Creates this cool little oval. Daniela, the only change on this one, I want you to face more towards the light instead of away from it during the exposure. Like not so much your body, but just your face. So let's try that one more time. And so as I walk to her position, what I'm doing is I'm using my body to hide this light so that the camera doesn't see it, because it's a little tough to turn these on once I'm in position. So let's try that again. Okay. Yeah, and we got a much cleaner black out of it that time. Obviously, the movement of the wand isn't as stable, and you are going to get unexpected results every time you do this. Now, again, we're using flash on this. You can use a pop-up flash on the camera, or you can completely work in the dark and use only lights like this if you want. If you're working with a person, it's a little more difficult, but if you're working with a subject that's not a person, like an inanimate object, let me get the lights up for a second. If you're working with an inanimate object, you know, a big stuffed bear or something, you could actually use a light like this, or any of the small flashlights that we talked about before, to light that thing up, because it's not going, you know, it's a painting with light that, like we've done already, but it's all in one shot. With people, the reason I'm using flash is because people move. No matter what you do, they're going to move a little bit. I'm going to try one last thing here, just to get a different perspective on this light. And I'm going to bring it towards the camera during the exposure and just see what happens. All right, lights out. I'm going to fire. So I'm going to bring it in behind her, straight up and down. And then I'm just going to drop it down low and come back the other way. Again, this is all trial and error. No idea what that just did. Let's see. I know what it should look like. So we don't get the depth of it coming towards the camera. Maybe if I brought it straight from her right side down, we'll try that and see. Let's do one more exposure this way. I'm not sure we're going to have a frame of reference because we're in the dark, but let's just see what happens. Yeah, it was actually out of the area. All right, it was out of the frame. So anyway, we'll look at these images a little closer. I'll do some editing on this video so that you can kind of see things as we go along. But you kind of get the idea. What we're looking at is using any type of continuous light. Now these little sticks, you can buy these at Lowe's, at Walmart. They're like really a couple bucks a piece at that. I think I got a couple of them once for 99 cents. But you can buy them almost any place. And again, if you just take a regular flashlight and cut a small aperture out, you can, or put a little color gel or something over top of it. You can come up with all sorts of creative light sources to use for this. But the idea is to do one long exposure where you create light streaks somehow. This is actually a lot of fun outside. If you have a little bit of ambient light and you get the exposure right on the environment or the scene that you're in, to take something like this and move it through the scene as the camera, as the shutter is open, you can get some really wild effects that way. I'll see if I can find some images to show you what I mean. But in the meantime, I just wanted to throw something together really easily to give you an idea about the overall technique. So it's the same idea that we've been doing with light painting. The only advantage is that we get it all in one shot instead of having to layer multiple images together. All right, thank you. Okay, so I wanted to show you some examples of what I was talking about, some different ways to use this technique. We'll start with one that is pretty normal, one you've seen before, using automobiles or vehicles of some sort in the moving light trails that their headlights and taillights create. The key to a lot of these images, especially hang on one second, we're going to resort these. The key to making this a dynamic image is being there at the right time of day. Obviously, any later and we would not have had any detail in the foreground or in the hills or the sky. What makes this a dynamic image is the interplay of the cool tones against the warm tones in this, and having all that detail in depth all the way back. This is probably, you know, based on the length of the trails here. This could be a 20-second exposure or something. With those cars moving through the scene. Very trial and error depending on the amount of light you have, also the settings that you have on your camera, f-stop and ISO. Here's another example of it, not utilizing any ambient light, so this could be, you know, well after dark, much darkness the way we had been doing, and then she actually took a flashlight or a pen light or something and drew that design. That would have been a possible way to do this. You know, you see people do this with sparklers and things like that all the time, where they're writing words. Not an easy thing to do, by the way, to get it right. Here's another example of the automobile light trails. Again, really cool, great time of day. Just enough detail in the background there, and enough darkness in the foreground to set the lights off. This one's a lot of fun. Part of this could have been composited. That background, the hills look a little fake, and as do the sky and the star trails, but it could have been done normally. The model is lit, as is the foreground, with some type of light wand that was moved and waved around behind her during the exposure. So that's the only light source in the image, is whatever this was. And it did a lot of different things. It created its own little pattern, plus it lit the model and the foreground, which is kind of cool. Here's probably one of the simpler examples of this, where it's just on-camera flash, and then this person is outlined with a sparkler. Simple and easy to do. Again, it has to be fairly dark. There is a little bit of detail in the sky behind, but however long it takes to outline somebody is the length of the exposure. This is an interesting one. I work with fire performers occasionally, and that's what this is, you know, someone has some flaming something or other on a cord that they're swinging as they walk through to create this effect. Again, time of day, so important, so critical here. Could have possibly gone a little bit later and darkened that background up a little bit, but it's a pretty interesting shot as it is. Very similar effect here, shot outdoors at night, multiple flash, and then this performer is just swinging something that's on fire on a tether. This one's an interesting one. I'm guessing that foreground is probably lit by headlights, like car headlights or something, and the just taking a pen light and pointing it at the camera and drawing these stick figures. Now, if this person moved, you know, if it was one person that did this and they moved from figure to figure, this could have been a 30-40 second exposure, maybe even longer, based on those how much the stars have moved in the image. But the people don't record because they're constantly in motion. So it takes a while to build up this exposure, and then they're just not in any one place long enough to actually record. So that's kind of fun. It's a really cool use of the technique. So this is one of the fire performers that I've worked with. This was studio shot in darkness with flash, while she's moving these fiery wands around in a bit of an arc pattern. And this one, now the treble clef was added later, but the rest of it was done in a single shot, just the way we've done.
shot in darkness, multiple flash, and then using one of the blue glow sticks to slowly outline her all the way around. And you can see with the black line, the black edge on the front edge of this, meaning that she had moved between the flash exposure and the outline exposure. But anyway, that'll give you some ideas. That's going to be the assignment for next week, is to create some type of light trail, some type of motion, whether it be behind a person, outside. The sky's the limit. Use your imagination and just see what you guys can come up with.